I'd like to call the regular board meeting of the Ross Valley Sanitary District to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we shall adjourn to closed session.
Mary Tiffany.
Yes, ma'am.
Kelly.
Here.
And Joe too.
Bates. Present. Scylla. Here. Gaffney.
Here. Now we adjourn.
In line with the fact that we have some attendees and we don't want to have them have to sit through.
Okay, so that's item 11.
Shall we move it before standing committee? or-
Yes.
Yeah, let's move it right after open meeting.
Okay.
That's number 11. Any other changes to the agenda? Did that change?
I so move that we approve the agenda in that order.
Second.
Any discussion? Discussion in the audience? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Open time for public to raise items not on the agenda or for future agendas. Members of the public may address the board regarding issues that are within the RVSD's jurisdiction. Board can hold no discussion during this time. These are items that are not on the agenda. And if you wish to speak, you can make that a 3-minute. Does anybody wish to make, yes, please introduce yourself.
My name is Julia Earl. Should I just stay there?
Yeah, you can,
Oh, okay.
that'd be fine.
So, I own a home in Larkspur on Christmas Tree Hill, and I purchased it in 1990, and since then I've been paying sewer charges to Larkspur, Ross Valley Sanitary District. And I share a driveway with my neighbors who are at 11 Sunrise Lane. I'm at 7 and they're at 11, and in the same driveway, but their sewer line goes down to Cordillera. They had some problems with their lateral this summer, and so they decided to replace the sewer line. And in the course of doing the repairs, they discovered that my lateral actually ties in with theirs. So all this time, I've been paying Ross Valley Sanitary District and Larkspur instead of Sanitary District number 2. So we just discovered this, and it was confirmed by a dye test done by their contractor, and then a few days later, someone from Ross Valley came and did the same test and confirmed the results. So the sewer charges for Ross Valley are considerably higher than in Cordillera, and because I've been in my house for so many years, the cumulative amount is quite substantial at this point. So, or at least for me it is. Ross Valley already refunded me an amount of about $3,000. That was the difference, well, it was what I paid for the last 3 years. And I understand that there is a policy in place that kind of limits their liability to 3 years. But so what I'm here to do is to ask for an exception. Felicia very kindly guided me through the process of getting reimbursement, and also has helped me to understand what some of the policies are. And so knowing that, I came to ask, since it isn't, I understand the reason for the policy because it limits liability if we're a huge amount of money, but in my case, I'm an individual and a senior, and it's a very unusual situation, and so I'm hoping that that Ross Valley Sanitary District might be willing to reimburse me for the difference between what I paid to Sanitary District number 1 and what I would have paid to Sanitary District number 2, which comes out to about $2,900. I have a letter that documents pretty much everything that I just said, and a spreadsheet that lists out all the charges for both agencies since 1990 to the present. So I just had come to ask for that consideration.
We can't hold a discussion.
No. We can put it on the agenda.
It isn't a policy, it's a state ordinance, isn't it a state law?
It's the district's own ordinance 65 for sewer service charges and for refund of those charges, and it quotes the state law
Quotes the state law.
with regards to refunds. Yes.
Can we have staff report and bring it back and have a look at it?
Yeah, I'd like to put it on the agenda. It may be what you just said, and that's the end of it, but I'd like the board to address this and to listen to the woman where we can talk to her. In fact, we can't talk to her now.
We can't,
Sorry,
you know,
we can't talk to
we
her.
can't talk because it's not on our agenda. We can't talk about it.
Right.
So, we'll put it on a future agenda and let you know.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you
And
like me
if
to
you want to
leave
leave
the-
your document, that'd be
Yeah, okay, I'll just leave this here and it should make it pretty clear.
Right.
Who should I give this to?
Andrew.
Yeah, one of us.
Yeah.
Thanks, Julia.
All right.
And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
All
Thank
right,
you.
have a good night.
Anybody else that's public comments?
Hmm?
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to number 11, agenda item number 11. Consideration of granting final approval for public sewer extension from number 402 for the Victor Village project at 2626 Sylvester Street Boulevard in Fairfax, and adopting resolution 18-1550, reducing sewer connection fees for the low and extremely low income senior housing project application submitted by Resources for Community Development. Ms. Stanley.
Yes, thank you. So the board heard this item as a tentative approval for the PSX for Victory Village in July. And thank you. You're going to get an updated set of plans here. The set of plans that was included in your packet was an attachment to the CEQA opinion, and we actually have an updated set of plans. So we'll address that first. The difference between the two sets of plans is that the proposed sanitary sewer easement is now shown on the drawing. The lower lateral is now shown as a 6-inch diameter lateral instead of a 4-inch diameter. And the upstream manhole has been moved about 10 feet to the southwest so that it's entirely on lot 1. Other than that, the plan sets are identical. So the applicant in July made a proposal to the district for consideration of a reduction in fees. The total connection fees for this project, staff has estimated at approximately $600,000. The applicant is requesting a fee waiver of $480,000, representing 80% of the estimated connection fees. The district board had asked staff to look into other neighboring agencies to see what their policies were with regards to waiver of fees. The board doesn't have a specific policy about how to evaluate criteria for an applicant coming forward. And so the district responded back with some additional information with 15 other utilities, 3 of which do consider low-income and senior housing connection fee discounts. The board also requested some information with regards to other sources of financial support that are being provided to this particular project. That list is on page 2 of the staff report. Again, Ross Valley Sanitary District at a 50% reduction would be contributing basically an investment of $300,000 to this project. The district has received a number of letters of support for the project and a reduction in fees for the project, specifically from the Marin Community Foundation, as well as information from RCD, who's the project applicant, and then not included in your packet but distributed to the board separately are at least what looks like 11 emails in support of a reduction in fees and 1 letter from Tamalpais Pacific. There's another actual email that came in after office is closed this afternoon. I'll pass that down to the board clerk.
I also received an email from the town manager of Fairfax this afternoon. He did not specify a percentage. He simply said that he supported us giving them a discount. It was not, because I responded back to him, that there was an offer of 50 from this board, and they were asking 80, and he said, I'm just asking that the board consider a discount for them.
Thank you.
Okay, any more comments from the board?
There is a couple of additional points that staff would like to make that wasn't included in your staff report. The board had asked with regards to the 2 low-income housing developments from 2009 that had received fee forgiveness, what those dollar amounts were, and I have that for you tonight. The EH application connection fee, which was for 24 units, was forgiven $120,000 by the district board, and the Petaluma it was ecumenical project was 13 units, and the board at that time, again in 2009, forgave $60,000. So staff is recommending to the board tonight a 50% discount of the $600,000 connection fee, which is equivalent to approximately $300,000. I believe the project applicant is also here and available to make a presentation too.
And those 2 numbers you just gave us from EAH and Petaluma, that was at an 80% rate, correct?
That is exactly right.
Before we bring it back, before we go to the public, does the board want to make any comments, or do we want to hear the public first?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, so,
I want, Felicia, if you could explain the connection fee budget, and I called you about this, because that is in the report, and I don't know if people really understand that every year on our budget, we have a connection fee budget, and so I asked Felicia to give us, and you had sent an email, and I don't have it with me right now, but, and that gives an understanding that on our budget, sometimes we're close, and sometimes we're way off, and sometimes we don't have enough money, we exceed it, and other times we fall under the, if you could just comment.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Over the last 5 years or so, which is I think the amount of time that Director Meggs is referring to, we looked into what was the estimated budgeted revenue for connection fees, and what were the actual connection fees received in each one of those fiscal years. I'm afraid I don't have those numbers in front of me readily available, but roughly $200,000 to $300,000 is budgeted every fiscal year, approximately in the last 5 years. And we came pretty close to budget in most years, with the exception, I think, of last year, we were under budget by $80,000. That particular revenue source is dedicated to our capital fund. Is that what you were referring to, Director
Yeah,
Meggs?
there was 3 or 4 years ago, we actually budgeted for $150,000, but we made $200,000. I think it was on the development across the street here. And so how do you get to that number? Where do you get that $260,000? I know you were hoping the hospital, but where does that come in? Because
It's estimated development costs over the course of the year. I mean, most of those, obviously there's not a lot of development happening in the Ross Valley service area, but we do have a good idea of what those connection fees might be over the course of the next fiscal year, and again, they're fairly modest in relationship to the rest of the operating budget.
they did jump up from 150 to 260, and that's why I was asking that question.
It would have been based on anticipated development and
Okay.
connection fees for that period of time.
And is that number what we take in, or is that number what we net after we pass on half to CMSA?
What we take in.
okay, any more board comments?
No.
So let's hear from the public now, or from you want to speak.
Introduce yourself, whoever you're from. Everybody can hear.
Yeah, they got
Tom, why don't you organize it once you've done
I think the project applicant has a presentation first.
it? Okay.
The project applicant, Jake Rosen, has a presentation.
Very good.
So thanks, Felicia, and thank you, board members, for allowing me to make a statement today regarding our request for an 80% fee waiver. My name is Jake Rosen. As Felicia mentioned, I'm here from Applicant Resources for Community Development. I'm accompanied by Ray Madon here, representing Mosaic Urban, our project management consultant team. While we sincerely appreciate staff's recommendation for the generous 50% waiver fees, we're respectfully insisting that the board approve an 80% waiver in recognition of the public benefit of Victory Village, as well as the impact that this decision will have on the quality of life for the residents there. As I had previously stated at our last meeting, Resources for Community Development, a nonprofit affordable housing developer based in Berkeley, our mission is to build and preserve affordable housing for those who need it most. There's a tremendous need, well-documented need for senior affordable housing in this community, as well as across the Bay Area. But the process and cost of developing in Marin County is a significant challenge that I'm sure you understand. RCD has overcome significant hurdles to make this project happen and will be starting construction in December. At Victory Village, we'll serve 53 low-income senior households who actually fall into the brackets of extremely low, very low, and low income. Since no household will pay over 30% of their income on rent, it's likely that we'll be serving seniors with no decent alternative for housing in Marin County. The people that I'm talking about here are on fixed Social Security income. They're folks who never bounce back after the recession, people with large unexpected expenses that have blown their savings. Some might have been displaced by the fires in the North Bay, others displaced by undue rent increases. So living in rent-restricted affordable housing like Victory Village will allow them to afford rent and medication, make more regular trips to the doctor's office because they're not working 2 jobs, and age in place in a safe, healthy, and comfortable home. I know it might sound like this connection fee is relatively small to our connection budget, or to our development budget, but it's actually quite substantial given how tight this budget is, and this amount is certainly meaningful to the future residents of Victory Village. So what I can't stress enough is that the action that the board makes tonight will have a material impact on the housing where these future residents will live. We've already had to make some difficult cuts due to some financial challenges we've had to overcome. We can't provide the most durable finishes available on the market, as we refer to, or the spacious, high-ceiling community room that we were envisioning. While we have to make sure this project gets completed, regardless of the board's decision tonight, the board actions will determine if we have to cut important amenities on the project that is already had its features rolled down. Some of these non-essential budget items include the elevator extending to the lower level, the elimination of which would force these residents to take the stairs to access property management and services offices. Raised garden beds included to allow the ease of access to vegetable and flower gardens, as well as finishes and amenities in the common area and unit kitchens, like plywood cabinets versus particle board cabinets, for example. Brandon's going to conclude.
So to all the funders, Jake didn't quite go through them all, but we had presented the budget based on the 80% discount, based on the 2 projects that you mentioned, by EAH and PEP. And we thought that was a reasonable assumption given how much our project is contributing to the community. So everything's been based on that budget. Dick didn't quite have the chance to go through the reasons for some of the cuts that we've had to make. Of course, we've been subject to the fires, putting constraints on the contractors, and so it's hard to even get the subcontractors for the GC, and so everyone's prices have gone up, and so we have, before construction closings, had to make significant cuts to the scope already. And we do completely understand that the district is facing similar issues, and that you rely on these fees to make important improvements to critical infrastructure. It's just so unfortunate that we're having to ask for this waiver at this moment when your agency really needs the funds as well. But we're hoping that you'll look for another way, and that I wanted to say also that we would not be making such a strong appeal to the board if we could find another way. It takes a lot of people to get affordable housing built, and this project has taken some very hard work by a whole lot of people, and we owe the best project that we can build in gratitude to our funders who have worked to increase our financial support whenever we've gone back to them, in gratitude to the community for continuing to show up and support us, to help people see the overwhelming impact that Victory Village will bring. and also in gratitude to future residents who will call Victoria Village home for a long time. So we think that you will also be proud to have been involved with the project. We thank you for letting us present, and we'll be available for questions.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Linda Jackson. I am the program manager for an organization called the Aging Action Initiative. And we represent over 125 public agencies, nonprofits, and healthcare providers that work for the well-being of older people in Marin County. No doubt you have friends and relatives and neighbors who are over 50 who rent, and you know their stories. It's been a tough time for them the last few years of people losing their homes. If you ask people in the field, where does that woman move to? Many times it's to their car because they can't afford a new place. So this has really reached a point of a crisis in our community. It's not just for older people though, it's for employees and people who take care of them. And you know that probably, I'm sure, in your agency, the challenge it is to hire and keep people, the best people in your agency because of the housing crisis. We've identified in the Aging Action Initiative that it's a priority to advocate for housing for people to be able to, older people to be able to stay here as renters. So there was a study completed for the Commission on Aging called the Older Adult Housing in Marin Planning for 2040. And I'll just note that in 2015, so this is 3 years ago, in Fairfax, there were 154 renters paying above what they should if it was an affordable housing. So they're overpaying for their rent, and their obviously fixed income on Social Security is not going to keep up with the rent increases that we've seen. So this is a real chance for you to make a difference for a small, light footprint folks, older people that are going to rent and live in these affordable units, very light footprint, and you can make a difference in their lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Wendy Callens. I'm with the Coalition for Livable Marin, and we would also like to rise in support of the 80% discount. And I have here some letters. You may have all of them for all I know, but these were some selected letters from Fairfax residents, and I want to read from one of them because it really outlines what kind of hardships this project has already gone through and why it's important for the Ross Valley to step up. This project was delayed over 4 years. And this is from, by the way, Norma Fregosa. She is speaking for herself. You may know her as a planning commissioner in Fairfax, so she's well versed in this project. But as I said, she's speaking for herself. The project was delayed over 4 years during an exhaustive entitlement process, thus losing their opportunity to apply for several rounds of tax credit. The project finally secured their tax credit allocation. However, the budget proposed at the time award is significantly less than recent bid estimates, which include increased requirements for fire safety, new roadway and sanitary line installations. The project at its sole expense is also required before final approvals to install sanitary service to 2 adjacent but separate parcels which are neither on the market nor have development plans at this time. The construction market, as you've already heard, given the North Bay fires, is resulting in current construction bids at exorbitantly higher costs than originally estimates. The County Board of Supervisors Housing Trust Fund and block grant funds have generously increased their loans to the maximum amount available, as has the Marin Community Foundation. The Ross Valley Sanitary District is the only other entity considered as a local agency matcher funds by tax credit requirements. There is no other local source of funding left for Victory Village to turn to for financial assistance to close their funding gap. And then she, just to complete, actually I'm going to go to the beginning of the letter. She says, This Victory Village Senior Affordable Housing Project in Fairfax, it's one of the finest proposed affordable developments in terms of design, community compatibility, sustainable construction practices, and incredibly 100% affordable to low-income seniors. So for the small amount of going from 50% to 80%, it can make an enormous difference for these people who are desperate for housing. I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Bosch. I'm a resident of Fairfax, and I am here tonight representing myself, but also a number of residents that have advocated for this housing. I'm asking you tonight to consider the largest possible discount for sewer hookups for this project. We've already heard what Victory Village will provide. I also want to add that it will provide 11 units set aside for formerly homeless adults, which would address a growing problem in our community. And 6 of those units would be specifically for people with mental health challenges. And for any of you who've ever had to try to house a friend or family member with those kinds of challenges, you know how incredibly challenging it is. I think here in Marin, we've been rightfully careful about protecting our natural environment and open space and protecting ecosystems and biodiversity, but maybe a little bit less good at fostering our human ecology and diversity. And I think we probably need to change that a little bit. We've probably rightly restricted development, which has given us a slower pace of life in this beautiful open space, but it's also come with a cost, which is the displacement of a lot of low and moderate income households who can no longer afford to live in Marin. So I think we have a special responsibility, because we get a lot of benefits out of some of this, as a community, to be mindful and strategic about how we will retain and encourage income and ethnic diversity so that we can remain a healthy and sustainable community. I think many of us have faced the heartbreak of watching friends and neighbors and family move out because of the affordability crisis. This crisis is much harder on seniors. About a quarter of older adult households in Marin are renters, and 7,000 of those households are overpaying their rent, and those numbers are expected to grow in coming years. However, there are not even 2,000 units of affordable housing set aside for seniors and people with disabilities at this time. While rents continue to rise, wages have not kept pace with those rent rises, and at retirement, as we know, a lot of us face a drop in income, and then an income that tends to be level, and yet the rents keep rising. So for people who are living on the edge as it is, as workers, once they retire, things can get very dire indeed. So many people are facing hard choices that we've heard stories about between housing, healthcare, and food. Due to the robust public process and more than 13 public meetings that went on to approve this in Fairfax, this project has been delayed and delayed and delayed, which has resulted in this funding gap for the various reasons that we have heard about. So even though a lot of us have put in countless hours advocating for this project, coming to these meetings, standing outside doing vigils at our parkade, tabling in front of the Good Earth, writing letters and whatnot, we're still a little bit concerned about the viability of this project as citizens. And so we know that this funding gap is not your fault. You guys are here to protect us as ratepayers and make sure that things run smoothly. But we're asking that if at all feasible, if you could consider an 80% discount for this project. Many of us feel like we're already bearing individually the costs of the lack of affordable housing in our community. And look, there hasn't been any affordable housing built practically in Ross Valley in 10 years, since like 2008 or 9. So this is a rare opportunity to create some real affordable housing here in Ross Valley. And we really hope that our public agencies will pull with us to create that housing for those most in need. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ralph Marqueza, and I'm a member of the Commission on Aging here in the county. I chair the Housing and Transportation Committee, which brings me here tonight. This project its virtues have been extolled at countless meetings, and members of the community have been there to support it all the way along. I'm here for a different reason. I'm here to try to raise the understanding just a level up to the infrastructure of the county. The members of the Board of Supervisors have widely supported this project. The Marin Community Foundation's dollars have been more than generously afforded for a variety of reasons, and yet the project is struggling. Not struggling in the sense of public commitment or demonstrated support to the building of the community, but really just simply on the financial side. The role that your agency can play can be a bit of a trendsetter, and we're going to need that beyond this project. It's important for this body to understand that the county coffers and the philanthropic dollars typically don't go to this kind of infrastructure funding. But more importantly, the budgeting that you do for next year needs to take into account that this kind of a product is of increasing importance. The study that was commissioned by the Housing and Transportation Committee identified that many more projects like this are going to be undertaken and need to be. I've been doing healthcare research for about 40 years, and one of the things that came glaringly true was that people have talked about in policy settings making a primary care home for people. And here we are at this late date trying to identify a home for people. To the degree that we can congregate older Marinites in a setting that takes care of the multi-dimensions of their needs and do it in a way that prevents isolation, that prevents the hardships that come from the older years, especially when families have been dislocated, can't be underestimated. It's these infrastructure costs that even at the permit level for an ADU or a junior accessory that would allow them to live alone stymies them. And the level of support that you give actually catapults this effort. So I want you to take my comments to be a statement of recognition that what will parlay from your decision will be even greater than this particular project. And I'd like to work with you in the future to see to it the recognition that your body deserves is afforded appropriately. If you choose to remain silent, that'd be different, but I'd urge you to lock arms with the other district boards like yourselves to elevate this issue, because it's a big one that's coming on strong, and this effort that you could make would not be just lightly taken. We much appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ben Berto. I'm the Director of Planning and Building for Fairfax. And I just want to say that projects like this are almost as much an act of faith as anything else. When the applicants came to Fairfax and said, hey, we have this idea, they were under no illusions that this would be an easy process. And of course, it proved to be your typical exacting marine project. Nonetheless, they did reach an important milestone. They got their discretionary approvals. Well, of course, as those of us who have some familiarity with these types of projects know, that's only a starting point. The finances with these projects are always exceptionally tight. There's always realizations, hard choices, recognitions that some things get to stay, some things have to go. And you see before you the information about the generous contributions that agencies, several agencies across Marin, and even your staff to date have afforded this project. The reality is there's still one of those very tenuous things to get to the finish line in some kind of decent shape. And I can say that having had numerous meetings with the applicants, and it's not for lack of professionalism. I think people have alluded to the perfect storm of what's happened when you wipe out 10 years of housing in the Bay Area and put thousands of people, the typical supply of contractors and other supplies is so much more constrained and more expensive. As a member, as a resident of the Ross Valley, I've looked at the fee increases that this group, your agency has passed on, and I support that because the reality is hey, we have to pay for our infrastructure some way. But I'd just like to reiterate what other speakers have said, which is that it takes a lot of very challenging decisions by a whole bunch of people, including agencies, to make these projects happen. And we're very, very close to a final project that will provide housing for dozens of people who are really out of options. I mean, that's what it comes down to. We all know people who are financially strapped, and as you get into your senior years, you really don't have a lot of choices, and that's what this type of housing represents, is something that will provide that type of a home for people in the community on an ongoing basis, and there's really few choices for those types of people. So I'd just like to put my pitch for your board to please consider the best discount you can offer. I don't think the 80% request is inconsistent with what your agency has afforded similar housing projects before. I realize the expenses involved are quite a bit higher, but at the same time, I think if we're looking at what has been a reasonable consideration in light of the value of these type of projects in the past, could and should be something that is made today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Okay, at this time, I'm going to bring it back to the board. Comments. I think, first of all, we can say that I believe the majority of the board, of our board, supports your project. And now we're going to talk, now we're talking about the money. But I personally support your project. It's a good. Why did it? I do have a question. Why did it take 4 years? What? I've only read a little bit of that. There was local opposition. Is that?
There was local opposition, and I wasn't involved in the project at the time, but our project kind of kicked off a larger conversation in the town of Fairfax regarding its housing element and rezoning. And we kind of got caught in the maelstrom and had to sit on the sidelines until that was addressed. And meanwhile, didn't have a lot of money to be doing work. So it really did stall the development. And we waited until about late 2015 to really reinitiate the conversations with the town and get our supporters.
Okay, thanks. Board member comments?
Well, I support this project. I'm not sure if 80 is the right number. You're talking about, first off, one thing I think we need to do is we need to have policy. And it might not be the policy tonight, but it's got to be the policy coming forward. I would hate to have somebody say, we made an assumption in the future, because that's not a good idea, unless they're reading a policy manual that says that this is the policy. The ask for 2009 on EAH was 45K, and on Petaluma was 22K. So the numbers are extravagantly larger today.
But that might be because our connection fees used to be a lot lower, right?
Well, if you look at it, if that's a question I don't have the exact answer to, but I think you can look at it proportionately, whereas EAH, well, you probably do math, EAH had 24 units.
Okay. No, it didn't matter.
Oh, you didn't matter. So
as in 50 as opposed to 80. That's how I based it on.
right.
And of course, whatever we do, the CMSA has to do as well. So I think that's good, and I want to support the project. The other issue is, just so the people here understand, we had to make a lot of changes to our pipes because we're under court order to do so. We were having a lot of spills, we were having a lot of sanitary sewer overflows, which is not good for anybody. And we currently have about $44 million in the ground right now.
Under construction.
Under construction right now, today, $44 million. So, I'd like to see what we can do. I want to see what the feeling of the rest of the board is. But I want to just make clear that it's a big ask. It's a lot of money. One of the things that when we have a connection fee, what you're doing is you're buying into what we just paid for. So there's that too. What do you?
Again, I 100% support what's happening out there and trying to accomplish the building of this. We're tasked with, okay, where do we get the money to do this? And if we discount $300,000, we still have to pay a connection fee to CMSA. On top of that, so that's always a question for us is, where do we reach out and grab that other $180,000 from us?
But the 300 is what we've already agreed to.
Yes, yeah. but to go to 480, which is the 80%, that's what's open for discussion here. And I was just trying to say, okay, let's assume for a second, let's make an assumption that we really can't go more than that. What else could, as an agency, we possibly do? And so I had some thoughts, and I don't know if they're completely doable, but let's maybe have a discussion about it. One is, we have a grant and a loan program for laterals. And we have a budget for that. And could we take that amount, and perhaps, I don't know, but could we offer it as a loan, very low interest loan, like we offer to the rest of our constituents, paid over a great deal of time to reduce that burden? Maybe we could do that, I don't know, we have to have that discussion here. The other thing is, we have every year, people who are of low income can ask us for a reduction in our fees that we pay, that they pay us. So it's not the full amount, and I believe it's what, 25%? Okay, and I'm looking at your numbers here, and I would guess that all 54 of these units would probably qualify. And I don't know how that works with a complex like this, but I would certainly hope that we could figure out some way to say this is all in that low-income arena that we've got, that a few years back we figured out that we could offer this as a service to our community and then reduce the burden, maybe not today, but by doing these other combinations of things, reduce it going into the future. I mean, just, I did a quick calculation, I'm not a mathematician, but you know, if we were to do the 180,000 at approximately 4% is what we offer, our loan program.
Yeah, I think it's 4.25.
4.25, somewhere around that. It would be about $7,200 a year, which it would be $133 a year per unit. Okay, it's not free, but again, this is all stuff I think we could then say to our ratepayers when we go to do our rate increase next year, which we have to do. You know, we could say, okay, we gave them generously in support of our entire Ross Valley $300,000, but here's these other things, and we hope that might be helpful to do. I don't know, but anyway, those are just my thoughts.
Thank you. Pamela, you will.
I'm going to go last, thank you.
I guess I'm going to go next then. I mean, I will say, you know, I hear what the two board members who've spoken are saying, but when we start to look at the numbers, right, so everything gets divided in half, because half of what we're taking in or reducing it by is going to CMSA. I mean, in a way, it's kind of funny to me because we get to decide how charitable CMSA is going to be. And usually I feel the opposite. That CMSA gets to tell us what we are going to pay them. So we're talking about a difference between donating to this project $300,000 or donating to this project $480,000, but it's actually only half of that. I mean, so the difference is $180,000, and it's only $90,000 that we are really going to be pulling out of Ross Valley's budget. And when I get to that point, $90,000, based on what our budget is, and based on the way that we have to raise bond revenue to do the work that we're going to do to put pipes in the ground, and I see the people in this room, I think Steve mixes his. I think that it is worth $90,000 for this to make a pledge to this community that what we think they're doing is right. Now, I am totally okay with if we want to pass our ordinance that says from this day forward, we will do this at 50% so that folks can budget appropriately. I mean, there was some reliance on our past practice. We can argue that the numbers are totally different, but we raised our connection fees exorbitantly, which we should have, because they were resting at like 1990 rates for a long time. So just within the past 4 or 5 years, we brought our connection fees up to speed. And so it does have a different economic impact, but if they were to go back and rely on our previous percentage, that was all they had to do. I start to look at how much other money people other organizations put in, and Fairfax put in a combined $307,000. So we're talking about $90,000
Well, additional money.
Yes, we're talking about $90,000 difference between the two things, proposals, 50 and 80%. But Fairfax put in 307, Marin Community Foundation put in 3.05. I mean, I know they have more money than God, so I'm surprised, but I'm glad they put in that much at least. You know, there's a whole bunch of people who put in some money towards this. I mean, if anything, I would say MMWD probably could have done a little better, but you probably relied on what they've done in the past.
57,000.
57.
And what percentage was that?
It's 50. It's 50, right.
Oh, it was
It's-
50. that's
So, because they relied on it, because they put the budget together this way, and because we're talking about a difference of $90,000 for this agency, I would recommend that we choose the 80%, and then if we want to vote from here on out, we only do this at 50%. We just say, today we set our policy, but we didn't have a policy of that before today.
We're not a policy yet.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
you're
that's
not a
my,
policy yet.
that's my 2 cents.
Okay, Pamela wants to go last, so we'll go. First of all, I do support your
Oh,
project.
after you? You want to? Okay.
She wants to go last, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. I do support your project. Here's our situation. We have a capital improvement program that's probably a factor of 20 greater than it used to be. And you've probably seen our trucks and digging and projects in Fairfax. You're going to see more because we're going to be blocking Butterfield Road. So we are spending money big time. We're under a cease and desist order, and that's because repairs weren't made in a timely manner. And so now we're forced to make repairs, and we've got to do it. If we're looking, I have to be realistic with you, we've had rate increases each year. We're looking for another, we're probably going to have nominal rate increases into the future. And I'd hate to have somebody running, you gave an 80% discount here and you're raising our rate. We're going to hear about it anyway. We definitely are going to hear about that. You also have an opportunity, evidently there are properties beyond your lateral connection, so I hope you're pursuing a reimbursement agreement with those properties to reimburse you for your cost of the sewer. So you should get something back here. Now, Michael brought up 2 ideas, and he and I have been discussing these. First of all, our low-income sewer service charge, which is a key element here. It's like a mortgage, you got to pay it. And we don't give it if you don't own the property. You have to be a homeowner for that. But I would be receptive to an ordinance change that gives it to collective, low-income, nonprofit organizations like yours. I mean, I would be happy for that. And we can revise our ordinance for ideas like that. Also, I don't know if you understood it, but we have a loan program for laterals. And but it's for repairing laterals. It's our program of trying to get rainwater out of our sewers. Our normal flow is 4 million gallons a day. On a very bad winter day, it's 60 million gallons a day. That's a terrible situation. And we have 200 miles of sewers and 200 miles of laterals. So we're giving grants to pay for the laterals. Now, we don't give grants to pay for new laterals, and that's what yours would be. But we could also pass an ordinance change that for properties, see, like you were saying, sir, we're trying to figure out ways that we can this work. So, in my opinion, I'm in favor of a 50% discount. It's a $300,000 total. Our share is $150,000. We've thrown CMSA's share in because they take what we, our way we work it.
And then they charge us back.
Yeah, and we pay 50% of their bills, by the way, so.
So that's really only a quarter to them.
And then the other thing is, look, I'm looking at the survey of utility of other agencies, and there's, I think it's 15 of them, or 16. And only 3 of us grant discounts, and those are the Water District, MMWD, and, well, wait, Sausalito, there's 4 of us. Sausalito, ourselves, and somebody else.
CMSA.
No, it's Santa Rosa, City of Santa Rosa, CMSA tags alone. And that's out of about, it's 16 agencies, only 4 So there's an area where I think we need to work, and we can help with that. But I think in the future, we might be able to give you some more if we change our ordinances. And then it would apply to other projects as well in our entire Bay Area. But that's my situation. That's the way I feel.
But the projects are few and far between. I mean, in terms of, and unfortunately so.
Okay, but they've been delayed 4 years, and we could probably pass an ordinance in about 3 months. And, you know, maybe we can help out that way if the board so agree. But, and it would be a general ordinance, not just your project. We have to provide it uniformly throughout our.
And again, those projects are far and few in between.
Pardon?
And those projects are far and few in between, so.
They are,
it's
yeah.
really-
I have one other question. So, Felicia, we have a budget, we expect to bring in $260,000 in connection fees
Yes.
this year. Where are we on that now? That's probably in the,
It's in there, we're at about, we're less than $10,000, it works out to be approximately $20,000 a month, but you know, that's just the $260,000 averaged over the year.
It comes in and fits and starts.
It comes in, yeah, in irregular amounts, but right now, we're about 50% of our estimated monthly revenue.
For 1 month, we're 15,000 below our budget out of 21,000.
But we're on the very
we're at the
young
beginning
year.
of the fiscal year. And did we anticipate this? We didn't anticipate this connection fee coming in necessarily. Was it in the budget model?
Not this particular
You know,
project.
we don't do individual projects. It's a losing game. They take 4 years. When you thought it was going to take 6 months or something like that, it's a rule of thumb number.
Right. I mean, my point is, we wouldn't have projected this into the budget. And I don't, and then that kind of makes my other point, which is this $90,000 is not, you know, I mean, in my life, $90,000 is not money, but in the however many $50 million budget of this organization, right? And I know that includes capital. It's not that much money. And as I said, I wouldn't mind changing tonight to say that from now on, we will do 50%, but therefore.
What's your logic on that when you think about it?
Because it's the legal principle of reliance. If you relied on something and you made a decision based on that, then that's a reason why we should stand by it until we say it from this day forward.
If we had a policy and didn't live up to a policy, I would agree with you.
But we had no policy, but we had a practice.
Well, wait, before you guys keep arguing, let me hear from Ann.
Yeah.
We had a practice.
We did.
So Mary,
Well, you did it twice.
yep, so Mary,
Let's hear from Pat.
okay, so being a planning commissioner in Fairfax for 8 years, Mary's got a good point that we can take project by project right now, and I actually called Greg on this one, just to get a little 2 cents and some history. And he said we have the right to go to 100% if we want as a board. So I want to throw that out there, and yes, we don't have a policy, and we haven't done a lot of these projects, and I think it was 2009. But for me, I look at the emails I got, and it's pretty amazing. They're dealing with this today. You know, you guys are on the edge, right, of moving on, and I understand money, and I understand being a planning commissioner and how difficult, amazingly difficult it is to do affordable housing. People laugh when you say affordable housing in Marin County. I mean, but this project is very unique. And being a nurse at Marin General, and I do work with the homeless, there is nowhere for these people to go. Absolutely, they are living in their cars or they're camping. And you actually put 11 homeless beds, which is pretty amazing when you look at the demographics throughout the county. And I saw the political arena in Fairfax, you know, they have to go through the thing and zoning and all that. But the good news is, you look very powerful on here with all these agencies that have stepped up to the plate. And so I feel very strongly that I think we can afford $90,000. I think we have so many million kind of still sitting. We haven't spent all our money is what I'm saying, right?
We will.
We have bond proceeds.
We have contracts to spend.
So, and I get it about we have doubled the rates in 5 years, and I get it about, making sure that the ratepayers understand, but this is a project that is so socially right, and if we can be part of that, and I think once Mary explained the 90,000, I could go, okay, that sounds good, because, there's 50%, but we really don't have a policy on that. And what else was I going to add? Yeah, my own kids can't afford Ben here. They just moved out of county. So I unless you got a lot of money, your kids are moving out. They're not staying here. And this is one of the most, you guys just stayed on your fight and your path, and I give you a lot of credit. So I'm hanging out with Mary over here.
Okay, well then, go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Is that all right, or is that out of place?
One over.
Just somebody to talk, I think there's only one.
Yeah, I'm sure that you're not too many, but yeah.
I'll be very fast.
Okay,
I
good.
just wanted to make a point about the 15, the survey that you did, which was really helpful and interesting. I wanted to say that all of those may be their policies, but they still have the discretion on certain projects to get a greater discount than the policy allows. And I guess, so on the creative ideas of the loan programs, I don't know if you were thinking about sort of getting them into place for us now. Well, since we have to close and then start construction in December, unfortunately, the way that the funding works, the tax credits involved are from the state agency, they're involved with bonds, and we can't make changes to, we can't wait for 3 months, that's for sure. And then we can't, the loans can get very tricky because of the ways they impact all of the financing. Unfortunately, which I hate to say, but it's not to say that it's completely out of the question, but it's a little trickier to.
And I just wanted to clarify, because if we give them a discount, then that counts towards some match of funds. Is that correct? Is that like, no? Okay.
They're
I was,
out there matching.
okay. All right. It's not like you're gonna lose double if we.
Mary, it isn't 100, it isn't 90 though, it's 180 because we pay Central Marin's bill.
I know. I'm a lawyer, I'm making a good argument for what
It doesn't hold water.
I mean, it goes around and around, just like
So-
our sewage.
We have a rare situation here, we kind of have us put forward because we usually don't on items, so.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we go to 80 for this project and we come up with a plan for future.
Well, we definitely want to come up with a plan for future, get an ordinance down, so we don't go through this again.
You want to make a motion? Are you calling for a
I would
motion?
so move that we discount this project 80% as a one-off.
And then pass the ordinance that,
Then we're going to blame.
We have to bring the
we're
ordinance back.
gonna blame Mary.
And this entire bill has to come.
Yeah.
Next
Support
spring,
our
and
rates.
support our rate increase.
I just want to say, I think this is a great opportunity for the board to really get out in front and really be a leader and demonstrate that, this is.
I was
Well,
out
half the
in
reason
front.
I'm doing it so they
At
just get back and see us.
300,000.
I was out in front of
All
that.
right.
We're out in front with 300,000.
So we have a motion.
I'll second it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
It's
Twice.
been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I'm for 50%, but I'm not going to be a no vote on it.
Well, I love your conviction.
Well, I don't believe in, making a statement. I think just, let's do it and be unified.
So we're just voting-
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, you convinced us.
Everybody come when we
Did
have
that,
to do
no,
our rate increase.
Andrea, does that count for passing this ordinance, or are we?
No, we'd have to bring an ordinance before.
No, we have to write an ordinance.
So you mean the policy?
Yeah.
Because it's
No,
not,
we
we already
already
have an
have
ordinance.
It allows you to waive it partially or fully.
Oh, okay, I thought we had an ordinance that was
I'm saying,
specified.
let's bring that back up and have a policy.
But I still think that the idea of the discounts for the service
Oh, they'll take that.
is going to be key to you. And that's something
That's $250 per unit for you.
I think we can still do that moving forward.
Yeah,
Yeah, it won't happen right away, but
right.
We have to
So,
build
can I-
that way.
Can you clarify that the motion was in fact to grant final approval for the PSX and to adopt the
Yes.
resolution at
Yes.
80%?
Yes.
yeah, that was it, right?
No.
You want
We
to
want a resolution that after this project is for 50%.
No, I
Because of
understand.
that,
I was
we have
saying
to-
back to the agenda item, I'm just trying to put his motion into the words of what you were asked to do with respect to
You
my
have
project,
to
which was both
approve the
to
extension.
approve the PSX, the extension,
Okay.
and to adopt the resolution for the
Do you
reduction.
want
Okay.
The policy for 50 is a separate item, but that can be
That,
part of
that
it.
is my motion. Yes, that was
to,
exactly
so
right.
that's
Oh,
the
so the-
motion. In other words, Pam, it's an addition to the motion, is to approve the PSX as well.
Right, and that means it's going to an extension for public service, right,
Yes.
Felicia?
Public service.
Prior, it was private public.
Okay, so you agree to the change in the motion?
And they're going, they have to pay for that.
Yes, they did.
Does this ordinance 90 pertain just to this project?
No, you're not changing the ordinance.
No, we're not changing the ordinance.
Oh,
There's
okay,
a
I
resolution
apologize.
and
I thought this was a revised.
This is
version.
just
Okay.
the information.
I apologize, okay.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Pat.
All right, let's go back to our standing committees. Item 8, Finance Committee. The Finance Committee met yesterday, Doug and I, and we reviewed a number of the items that are also on our agenda. We didn't review the finances. We did, but it wasn't on our agenda, so we're going to pull them. I would like to pull them from the consent calendar.
Okay.
Section Marin, did you guys have
Well,
any?
okay, I have to beat him up now, because we have to have an argument how to
That's
do
it.
this. Okay, I'll do it.
Okay, you're good.
There was none. Jason was floating down the Rhine.
So we had no meeting.
North Bay?
Yes, it was an awesome meeting. Bruce Wolf was there. He is retiring. He is the best speaker. He was so organized. I'm not going to bore you with everything, but he sort of wrapped up so many things, what's going on within the state. Number one is wastewater discharge and enforcement. And also he talked a lot about spills that affect groundwater. Talking about climate change, and they're going to have to review and redo their policies. They also talked about how can we use wastewater to restore wetlands. Other issues were bacteria for when you go swimming. And, they're really following that more closely. You have a comment? Let's see what else. We talked about chlorine residue discharge, septic tanks, what else? Infrastructure and how climate change will increase flooding. Talked about the Ocean Protecting Council and also sea level rise. And let's see, what else did we talk about? He also brought up the homeless and that the trash they create and how it affects the water runoff. And cannabis. That, it's pretty destructive if whatever they're doing. And I imagine taking part of the water. So it was a great conversation with him. And then Lori Lewis is going to start a strategic plan. And so for the next 3 meetings, we'll stay over an hour extra and create a strategic plan. And I hear she is really amazing. And that's it.
Thank you. Item 9 is verbal reports by board members and staff and requests for future items.
Obviously, we want an agenda item for the discounts we'd offer for low-income housing, be put on the future agenda.
Which we'd probably do that as part of Wednesday, don't you think?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Absolutely.
I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, that's absolutely where that's appropriate to add. In fact, that would be, very good.
At the same time, we'd have to look at changing the ordinance so that a low-income housing structure is granted discounted rate use policy as well. So we want to bring that back.
That's what we're going to do.
Well, you mentioned it, but it's not a policy.
Oh, I know, so we'll bring it up during the, as
Yeah, bring
part
that
of the
up as
base
well.
study, because we've got to rewrite the ordinance anyway. But it's got to be a non-profit low income.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Michael, do you have anything?
No.
Just for agenda items, I would like to, there's no more policy and procedure subcommittee, right? Did we
No.
disband it?
I don't know.
I-
We haven't had one for a long time.
So I would like us to bring and look at, and I'm not even sure if we have a civility communication. I know we have a communication policy, but I think that's more about externalized stuff. But I would like us to look at a civility code policy for the board.
Would you like me to distribute the one that we already have to
We
the
have
board? We have something about board protocol, which probably captures that, and I'm
Okay.
happy to circulate that, and then the board can consider if they'd like to make modifications to it.
Great, thank you.
Staff has a couple
Mary,
of.
do you have any-
Nope.
I like that idea of, maybe as part of the rate study too, of lateral loans. If we pass the 50% limit, maybe we could give a loan for the laterals, for new laterals.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, I like your idea.
Well, that was actually Michael's idea, but I think it's a good, we can't do it yet. Okay, any others? Let's go to consent calendar, item 10.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I do have a couple of
Oh,
announcements
sorry.
from staff. I'll be quick. I am meeting with the LAFCO executive, interim executive officer, again on September 25th to continue our discussions with regards to consolidation with Murray Park and San Quentin Village. So those discussions are continuing.
Can I ask you,
Yes,
what have we heard from the county on that?
they're interested in sitting down and talking, and so that's actually what the September 25th meeting will be. It will be me and the interim executive officer from LAFCO and the County Public Works. I
And
think
what
it's
date
the
is that?
deputy director,
When is that?
September 25th. So it's a staff meeting at LAFCO
Yeah.
offices. We have had a couple of very good presentations recently, one to the city of Larkspur, one to the town of Ross. Catherine did a great job at the town of Ross, and that concludes our public outreach to municipalities. If the board has homeowners associations or other neighborhood groups or community groups that they think might be interested, there's a copy of the PowerPoint presentation in your information item. We'd be happy to schedule those if that's at all of interest. And we have had a couple of noise issues related to one of our capital projects.
Mary's willing to text at any time.
I just want to give a shout out to our staff, operations and engineering, who've been working very closely together to come up with some solutions. Yes, applause all the way around there.
Was that kind of a partial all-nighter or?
No, it was a full nighter.
It was a full,
I like the door hanger that says we're gonna have staff there from 2:30 PM to 6 AM. I was like, wow, that's a long shift.
yeah, well, there's two shifts. Yeah, two or three shifts, but they are staff who are going to be out and manning the pump station out there to prevent any additional noise issues. So that's been very successful, and again, I just want to thank staff for that. And then finally, and most importantly, I'd like to bring to the board's attention that the third Wednesday of the month, which is our typical meeting night in November, happens to be the night before Thanksgiving. So.
Which point?
Who's bringing the potatoes? I'd like to suggest that the board consider a meeting date of November 14th, which is the prior Wednesday in November, and we have to agendize.
Does that complete that with CMSA?
No,
Okay.
I mean, if CMSA would be the night before.
Oh, it'll be done.
CMSA would be the night before
Wednesday.
Tuesday, that's right.
Yeah, that's okay.
We won't know.
Okay, that's
So
fine.
we'll bring that to the board for your consideration to revise that meeting date in October for the November meeting. And that concludes my report.
That way it's all
There's one more
so
item.
we to remember it within
Yep.
24 hours.
Yeah, really.
It's up to you.
Oh, we did.
It's up to you. I don't have anything to report out.
We write a follow-up letter to the city of Larkspur. Felicia wrote it to the city manager. We debated whether to mention it during the presentation of Larkspur. Thought that wasn't a good idea. And so, anyway, we haven't heard back, have we?
No, we have not yet.
I'm sorry.
Part of our
They-
code of civility.
They got the letter.
Yeah.
Yes,
Did they put it on their agenda?
not to my
Not
knowledge, no. And so I sent an email reminder to the city manager to please let me know what their intended next steps are.
What their council member's response was during the meeting when it was on the agenda, right?
I don't know that it's been to their.
It hasn't been on the agenda, I don't.
So I'll keep you updated as I hear more from the city manager of Larkspur.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, item 10 is consent calendar. Matters listed under this item considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. The consent calendar may include resolutions, therefore the motion seconded vote must also be applicable to the resolution and recorded accordingly. There will be no separate discussion on these items as requested by a member of the board or the public prior to the time of the board meetings. And so I'd like to pull 10B just for a short discussion. Anything else? Okay, item 10B, the thing that I wanted to point out to the board is on page 4 of 5. Our OPED liability has gone up almost 5 times. And we were going to pay that off.
Yep. Is this because the actuary did their actuary?
They did, and the finance department has plugged those numbers in, and I haven't yet been able to provide a report to the board explaining that, but I intend to.
Do we think it's correct?
Based on the actuarial analysis, which of course is in turn based on the new GASB 75
Right.
requirements for reporting liabilities for other pension, other post-employment benefits. So I'm assuming, correct being a relative concept in terms of actual liability, but
That number, both Tom and I brought that up at the finance committee almost simultaneously, and we were both shocked when we saw it. Can I assume that do we have some updated actuary numbers on our pension liability?
we will, yes, absolutely. We'll have both of those.
We can run those, right? We have the,
And now we have the GovInvest, which will be the opportunity, I think, for the board to really be able to see in real time how the demographics of the agency.
We need to put that on
a future agenda.
very future, very soon, I would
Yeah,
say.
I would suggest maybe November, December, October is pretty
Okay.
jam-packed.
Okay.
But soon is appropriate. Yeah.
it's going to be,
You'll have our business administrator look at it?
Yeah. I'll sign
That was
over.
really shocking and very.
And I heard that they're working night times now.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
and a couple of other items. I noticed that some of our employees are taking advantage of the wellness programs.
Yeah.
That's good. And then we have an expense item to line 58 on the check register, Mercedes-Benz at Fairfield.
I saw that too.
And so what is
It's
that?
running like a top right now. I'll tell you that.
It's the CCTV
It's a
van.
CCTV.
Oh, which is Mercedes-Benz?
It
is, yeah.
No, it's a Ram.
Yeah.
What's
It's
nice.
really, Ram.
Yeah, for some reason. So we cleared that one up.
Just so you know, we're paying attention.
And then the next one on the summary, so right at the summary on page 404. So CalPERS retirement, annual unfunded accrued liability. So this is what we missed in our earnings for the year, or?
No, this is what we're required by CalPERS to contribute to our pension.
We contribute a standard amount, but this is the amount to make up the balance that we missed?
No, that's just our standard annual contribution.
Well, it says
for-
annual unfunded accrued liability.
Yeah.
So we pay that to get it funded.
We do pay that towards our, absolutely, towards our pension
But
liability.
you see what I mean? It's in addition to it's in addition to our share of the 8% or whatever. Is that correct?
No, that is the
That is the
8%,
one.
yes.
Any other questions on that? No, okay. So I just wanted to point that out. So do we have an motion?
Oh, no, actually, I correct myself. That is in addition to the 8%. You're right.
addition
It
to-
is in addition, yeah.
I'll make
We have to pay in addition also. Okay. Any other questions on the consent calendar?
No, we've got good, approved consent.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on the consent calendar? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. We've done 11. 12, authorize the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute a consulting service agreement with Harris Associates for engineering design and engineering design during construction services on the 2016-17 gravity improvements, Butterfield and Royal Meadowcraft on the Winship and Compass Bridge sewer relocations for $248,860.
Yes, thank you. So this is a request to enter into a contract with Harrison Associates for projects related to the 16-17 gravity sewer improvements at Butterfield and for the Winship and Comus Bridge sewer relocations. The design services are required to repackage, bid, and support the construction of the Butterfield project, to coordinate, finalize, and design and support construction of the two bridge projects. The total amount of $248,860 is less than 5% of the total construction cost of $5 million. And this is partly because staff has been able to leverage some of these design services with a previous Harris contract covered in the consent calendar items. So that concludes my report, and we're available to answer questions.
And we didn't know about the bridge relocations
When we originally designed this project, no.
Okay, any questions?
No, that's what screwed the pooch.
Yep. And you can understand it.
And that was because of flooding, I believe. Okay.
No, it's the bridges are old.
The Nokomis Bridge was the one that had
Yeah, but the Nokomis Bridge is being reconstructed because of flood mitigation reasons. That's the reason it's being mitigated. So that's, Madrone is next. Bridge Street. They're all being reconstructed because of flood.
So this is approval for a total of $248,000. The $30,000 of that is kind of an extra contingency amount. So we hopefully don't have to come back and do this again. So I just want to make that clear.
And maybe dream that we get some of that back.
That being said,
Did you hear that? Of the total fee of about $2.5 million, I mean, $250,000, $30,000 of that is a contingency. That includes $30,000 contingency. So we don't have to keep doing this.
Right.
Okay.
So I move that we authorize the general manager upon review and approval of council to execute a consultant services agreement with Harrison Associates, Inc. for engineering design and ESDC services on the FY 16-17 gravity improvements, Butterfield/Arroyo Meadowcroft and Winship and Nokomis Bridge sewer relocations for $248,860.00.
Is there a second?
A second?
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No, okay. Item 13 is consideration of approving the contract change order number 5 for the pump station 12 Long Air and pump station 13 Green Bay pump station rehabilitation project with Anderson Pacific Engineering Construction in the amount of $220,000. So that's a change order for $220,000.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The original project that the board recalls for pump station 12 and 13 were packaged together at a total cost of approximately $7 million. There was a bid allowance in there of $200,000 that has been used up as shown on page 2 of the staff report. So staff is looking to basically increase the bid allowance for this project by another $220,000, partly because PG&E has required an existing transformer and power supply to be replaced to the tune of about $90,000 to $120,000. With this additional $200,000 would bring the total project costs up to about $7.2 million, which is still considerably less than 10%, which you might typically find for change orders for a project of this size, especially one dealing with unknown
So this is similar to the other one. The project cost is probably $90,000 to $120,000. We're approving 220 as a contingency there.
Right,
Because, you know,
because we don't want to keep
so
coming
other
back to the
things-
board over and over again for the same
Other
project.
things may happen there, is that
That's right.
the situation? Okay. As long as the board understands that.
I do, and what we find is you open up these pump stations and a lot of things that you thought were going to be reusable are not. So, you know, the good thing is you've got a new pump station, you've got a new electrical.
Is it brand new pumps?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And 12 is done, so ostensibly this is really, we've kind of used up $200,000, finishing up 12, and now we're on 13, and
Oh,
we're
I see.
expecting another $200,000, and not expecting, but hoping to have that cushion.
It's basically a new pump station, is that right?
Yeah.
Two new
Complete
pump
full
stations.
rehabilitation, because these were old
They
and
were very
awful.
old, yeah. And these might be more energy efficient, too, don't they have variable speed? Okay. Any emotion?
If I could read it, I can't, so I'm gonna.
I move we approve contract change order number 5 for pump station 12 Bon Air and pump station 13 Green Brae pump station rehabilitation project with Anderson Pacific Engineering Construction in the amount of $220,000.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
It's actually interesting, just as a side note to pump station 13 and pump station 15. Normally from 15, we go straight down the bike path underneath Zasalicio and down that way. But because we're redoing the pump station there, we did a bypass around that pump station, which is what's been noisy to cause problems.
Just when they're rags.
Just when they're ready.
They come through.
It's part of the solution for the last couple days. We were bypassing the bypass and sending the effluent down Stadium Way around Barron's and underneath Green Brae to pump station 13, which is on bypass. And so when
There's also one.
yeah, so they were having to stand at pump station 15, monitoring 13, because when they were bypassing to 13 and it went over 1 million, then they couldn't go to 13 anymore, and then they'd crank up the diesel generator and bypass 50, so it was very complicated.
Which is why we decided not to do this in the winter.
Staff.
Yeah, okay, that's all.
You know too much.
Well, yeah, he does. Item 14 is a consideration of authorizing the interim general manager upon review and approval of council to execute contract for real estate services with Newmark, Knight, and Frank.
Yes, thank you. So at the one of the last board meetings, the board had asked staff to look into some arrangements with the commercial real estate vendors to consolidate the district's 4 facilities into one potential facility, either within the district service area or fairly close by to provide adequate response times to needed service calls. So staff interviewed 3 commercial real estate firms and would like to introduce to you our selection would be best to represent the district in a situation where we would potentially buy a new property to basically house all of our 35 employees, operations and administration, including all of our work vehicles into one location. And Hayden Ongaro with Newmark Knight Frank is here tonight to introduce himself and to answer questions from staff. I would mention that this is an opportunity for staff, for the board to consider a contract with this firm and not necessarily to explore too much in any detail about potential.
Yeah, but that's all we care about.
Any questions of the board? I have one. How are you
Waited
related
to
to
Ned.
Ned?
How many years of the owner has been away from the hospital?
Ned and his dad, he was a superintendent.
Yeah, I know.
So Ned Senior was my grandfather's younger brother, and so Ned Junior is, I say cousin, I can't figure out all
Yeah.
that.
Cousin once removed.
Yeah.
Okay. And did you ever become a plumber?
I had no aptitude. I tried it and figured I better talk for a living.
I have actual questions about the property. And first off, we also want to consider the possibility of having enough space to also bring Larkspur Public Works into our little world, if that makes sense financially for them and us at the same time. Larkspur doesn't have enough room, and so. But just in general, what do you think? Do you understand our project needs?
I do.
How do you feel about it?
It's going to be difficult. I mean, we're in a very limited scope of industrial space that's available, and you're going to need some industrial component.
Mhm.
I've been doing this 30 years. We used to do industrial vacancy studies, and it never changed, so we said, why do it? But I mean, there's not a lot of buildings. What I talked to Felicia about is I've got a lot of contacts in the area, and it's probably not just looking for something that's on the market, but going and contacting owners and trying to create something. And I do have some things in mind, but there's not things out on the market. So I think it's something that we work together. It's going to take some time. It could come up right away, but I think my role would be to educate the board on values and things so that when the opportunity comes, it could be a competitive situation if it's listed that, we can react.
Okay. Absolutely. Let's see, our area in Santa Fe is just commercial. It's not an industrial zoning, or is it? Is it Kerner?
It's office and industrial. You have
Office and
yeah,
industrial.
yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah, my area, which is in the old Sufi, is industrial and commercial and office, and
Okay.
there's.
So there's a couple things to consider on Kerner, but likely it'll have to widen the scope. Yeah.
Anything within, I really have a bias to something in our district. Santa Fe's outside of the district.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything. We could turn over Red Hill.
I posed it to Peter Breen, who's been around for a long time. And he said, well, the county just bought Old Sunnyside out there for a flood.
That's a million miles away.
It's in our district? Is
Yeah.
it? Is it in our district, Steve?
Yes, it's in our district, yes.
It's at one end or the other. We're at one end of our district now, very far in.
Yeah, but people come in on the highway to see where they're coming from. When our employees come, they're coming to the Santa Fe area, and let him do his job and tell us what he's got.
I just throw that out there. You know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
But
So they bought it to be like a flood basin because,
We can put
Memorial Park
everything on stilts.
couldn't be closed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's going to be underneath. They're going to build something. So we can park trucks on top of that.
Yep.
Yeah, but that, I think, again, Hayden will tell us, but I think a property that already exists is going to be a heck of a lot cheaper than building something today.
All right.
Unless we get an 80%.
Do you know if the land from Kerner, that empty lot, is that available?
It's been are you talking,
If you drive in, it's all to the right and it's a dead end.
yeah.
Isn't there a bunch of
Right next
open
to our-
land there?
There is, that's been talked about for years for development. It's got some restrictive zoning, it's got some wetlands, so it's a complicated site.
Yeah, it's a wetlands area.
It's a wetlands. Now, that doesn't mean we can't explore it, but, yeah, there's been people there trying to get something done there for most of my career.
So, and your office is Santa Fe?
I'm office in Santa Fe, in between A and B Street on Fifth Avenue.
And is this going to be for a year? Is that a year contract?
I would expect that we should invest in about that amount of time in looking for a property. Yeah.
Oh, I think it should take that long.
Yeah.
Well, I don't misunderstand. We don't, it's a commission-based contract, yes? Or is
Yes,
it
it is. So the idea of the contract is, my goal is to find a seller to pay a commission, but because there's a good chance that it may be something that's not listed, rather than say, will you sell, and by the way, will you pay a commission, is to have an agreement with you guys so that it allows me to contact owners, and if they say, great, but I'm not going to pay a commission, then I'm protected and I can do investigation.
Okay.
Okay, so if the selling price or purchase price is $8 million,
Yeah,
what would would it be 2.5% of that?
yes.
It's not 3% for the first 5 million.
That's not what I was contemplating, no. It would just, it would, I mean, that would be better for me, but that's not what I was saying. I'm okay with that, though.
So if we can get a property for 490, 4.9 million,
Yeah.
we'll offer 5. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's all right, that's funny.
Thank you.
Real estate.
Any other questions of the board?
I like that we're going out and beginning this
I do too.
search. I mean, whether we do anything, but at least we'll be more knowledgeable as a board.
I would rather he be successful in finding this property and we consolidate these and sell this one. I mean, this one should sell, oh, this is a nice property.
Yeah.
The
What do you mean, Kerner or?
Yeah, it's a nice property.
Oh, I think so too.
Yeah, it is. It would be in Hindman.
Yeah. I mean, you
Even
see
though
that in the
it's
old GM's
slanted.
office, it's a beautiful view out over the,
The only
Walk.
real negative is parking, as you know.
yeah.
But it's got,
It's got a lot of parking, not enough for us, but enough for most places. Yeah. We come with trucks and.
That's true.
okay.
Do you need a motion?
We need a motion.
I would so move it.
I move, board authorizing interim general manager upon review and approval of council to execute a contract for real estate services with Newmark, Knight and Frank. Newmark, Knight and Frank.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks for bearing with us all this
Thank you.
evening.
Well, good work with everybody.
We should have moved him.
Yeah, we should have moved
You
it.
got to know
Yeah.
us.
We should-
Yeah.
Yeah, you heard us.
You have to know you live.
All right. Okay, it's the information items. 15A is.
We had one little spill. At least it
Steve,
was
what
just
happened?
one little spill.
Debris and rags.
How many days was it?
I was 11 hours told no spill report. So, yeah, it was only 30 gallons. Debris and rags got caught up, and thank God the homeowner called us right away. So we were able to respond quickly, and we have the problem fixed.
And what was it, 80-some days without a spill, or was it up to you?
Oh, I forgot.
It was at least 78.
It hurts still.
Yeah.
But I would like to say that I would love to talk in the future at the Communication Ad Hoc Committee about reducing the amount of debris in the line and all the outreach with Pam and Doug. I got some really good ideas.
Oh, great.
Because the debris and rag is what's starting to affect us. And also at.
Did somebody
pumping
flush
station.
rags?
It's not disposables, it's something else.
Oh, so what kind of adults diaper wipes or?
They're flushable, but they're not conveyable.
They're not supposed to be flushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, literally, I was walking back on Stadium Way at nighttime, walking the dogs back from Kentware, and run them around at like 9 or 10 p.m., and it went from and
Those
it's
things, we have a
really
big-
literally like 200 yards from my bedroom
a
window, I
huge
think.
discussion at Castle.
Oh, you could hear it?
Oh, yeah, so then I texted Felicia, and I texted Michael and said, you know, Steve, and then Catherine called me after I shut my phone off. But yeah, no, you guys are on it, thank you for that. But yeah, it changes dramatically very quickly, and I appreciate your responsiveness.
I also pointed out these metrics that this time it was Tom at our finance committee who immediately plucked out the 78 repairs, which really we just amazing amount of repairs for a small district like this with the size of staff and all of the other things you're doing. To get 78, which is better than the last month, which was 71, which I thought was astounding. So we just want the staff to know that we just think they're doing
And you
a phenomenal
said,
job.
Steve, that like $3,800,
$3,200 per.
$3,200 a bid amount per repair.
If
For
a
a
contractor
contractor.
did the same
Contractor,
work.
yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And so,
The CASA, one of the discussions they had was trying to get the manufacturers of the disposables, of the flushables, to actually put on there, do not flush these things, period, end of discussion.
We're part of the CASA wipe study and how much it costs, so that should be coming out soon.
It is a, I mean, and anyway.
okay, and 15B is the monthly capital program. And we're going to get a report encouraging staff on progress at Larchville Landing. And the 6 or 7 million for that is not all in there. But anyway, lots of projects going. We've got 47.5 million in potential, and we've paid out so far about 17 of that rate. So we've got a huge construction project going. Any questions on that?
I have a question for Felicia. Is scenic gonna be done on the 24th? Please, please.
It's
say yes, say yes,
anticipated
say
to
yes.
be completed on September 24th on time.
Because I got more emails, more pictures, and everybody in Fairfax probably got the same. I mean, it's, you know, it's the council, it's Garrett.
Yeah, the town manager here
And
is.
I'm not gonna, I feel at this point I have done my duty. I will, I think I'll go out there and walk up that hill and just see, but it'll be done on the 20th.
That's
And
the
that
last I heard.
project started 3 months ago?
Is that about right?
It's over 19 weeks. I know
Probably,
that.
yes, yeah.
July, I
We've
think?
moved it up in the schedule to try and get ahead of the paving project. so,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, so learned a lot from that one.
Yes.
Okay, to celebrate.
Okay, 15C is the legal activities and cost over. There's a trending up here now. We're within our budget.
Well, the year just started.
Well, the last 2 months were within our budget.
Yeah, this was trending down, it's now trending back up. It is below budget, but still, we'd like to see if we can find ways to not pay as much as we're paying.
Can I just note that I think that this is temporary in light of the fact that you're down a managing employee, and I'm playing a slightly different role during this time.
All right, that's
More
fair.
involved in staff meetings and writing some staff reports, and so I'm stepping in a little bit, and so.
And also, we've got the MOU.
Well, in that case, why don't you just step all in? Okay, no, I appreciate that input, and in light of that, it certainly looks.
It's a little higher, but I anticipated it. Yeah, she's been a very excellent resource to us. Again, you know, at the executive management level, we're down 25%. We normally have 4 people operating at that level, and now we have 3. And so Andrew's been somebody we can rely on, as well as doing the general.
Well, that's a good answer. I was like, that sounds good.
And then D is the presentations, and I've been to 3 of them, I think, and they've been fabulous.
Catherine and Felicia did great jobs.
The Yankees were playing that night, there was no way.
And the door hangers have been really nice too, that we've gotten a bit near our noisy pump station.
Okay, I think meeting adjourned.